Hello, hello, everybody. I'm Kerry Farr. Welcome to Recovery America. Before I introduce our special guest tonight and this esteemed panel, I want to share something with you that happened this morning. I received a phone call at 4:30, and I wasn't a happy camper. I'm not a happy camper when somebody calls me at 4:30, but it happened to be my stepdaughter who has had a problem with addiction for most of her life, and I think she's 44 now. And I got her approved at a treatment facility in Anniston, Alabama, several months ago, and she just wasn't ready to go. We were supposed to go last night, and she backed out, but she's been taking, what is it, Suboxone? Yeah, she's been taking Suboxone, and she hadn't had any for a few days. It's a medicine that they give people that are coming off of drugs, but it's an opiate itself, so it's just as bad as the drugs. And she was in a tremendous amount of pain, and so I went and got her out of a motel room about an hour away from here, and then we drove down to Anniston, Alabama, and they're putting her in the hospital today to detox, and then she's going to be in a one-year Christian treatment facility, and we are so excited. We think that this demon of addiction is going to finally set her free. And that's what we're here for tonight, because we're here to share the power of Jesus Christ and his ability to set you free. And tonight, Amen. I want to introduce our panel. Rob, I guess you got a wide shot here. You can just, right here on the very end is Mr. Larry McKnight, a Christian educator who actually was a heroin addict when he was a young man. And he would get so drunk in those days, he would pass out. He's been clean for 52 years. Congratulations, Larry. And our dear Lorraine Stevenson sitting next to me, basically got addicted to some pills while she was going through cancer treatment, I think, and then had to go in the hospital and get off of those. But she is a dear soul, and we love Lorraine. Six-time cancer survivor, and she's got so many beautiful songs that have reached gold and platinum on, what are they, Lorraine? Tell me.
Airplay Express.
Larry, give her the mic, por favor.
Airplay Express, and then I'm #1 in Australia on the inspirational chart.
Yeah, you got. If you've never heard this lady sing, if you'll go to inyourcorner.tv and go to the library and go to the portion that says Christian music. I just put 3 videos up of her a couple of days ago, and you can hear her amazing voice. Let me go all the way over to the end here, and Kim Carpenter is with us, and she is in recovery. She used to be an alcoholic, and she's been set free by the power of Jesus Christ, has an amazing Amen. Story, and she's very well spoken, and we're just so delighted that she's here. And next to her is Heather Hooley. And Heather, you and your husband are the recovery pastors at Graceland Church in Franklin, Tennessee. All right. And then let me introduce our very special guest. I first met this lady sitting next to me, I think 13 or 14 years ago. I was doing an event at Christ Church where we were showing people how to write a book. And I remember you walked in, Lori. You were late, and you sat in the very back.
I was late. Oh, my goodness.
But I remember you came with Jenny Press, and what's her name now? She's married now.
Mike Bennett.
Yeah, when she
Bennett.
So
Sorry.
Anyway, Lori came in, and somehow we found her story. And Rob, our cameraman, were there that day, and we filmed a television show with Lori right then. But she has an amazing story. She's married to a man by the name of Todd Payne, who's a very wonderful man, and he is the son of Glenn Payne. And those of you that know anything about Southern gospel music, he is a legend, was with the Cathedral Quartet for years and years, just an amazing singer. And so you've got that, and not only that, you have been an airline stewardess for 35 years with American Airlines, and you're the person that somehow introduced Toby Keith to the music business. Tell us a little bit about that, and then tell us your story.
Oh, goodness. The Toby Keith story. Back in the day, I grew up in New Mexico, and I was in school. I was in college at New Mexico State. And Toby used to play with his band, the Easy Money Band, at little clubs around the college, and I guess we had fake IDs back then. But anyway, we would go in and listen, and he was trying to get a record deal. I ran into him in Nashville, and he had some of his old cassette tapes, and I threw them in my flight bag, and why not? So I was fortunate enough to meet Harold Shedd on one of my flights, gave him one of the tapes, and he was very, I guess he left me a voice message on the phone, because back in the day we had those recorders and stuff. Yeah, and so he left me a voice message, and he said, well, I listened to that tape and I was pleasantly surprised. And Toby had some #1 hits on that tape. So anyway, made some phone calls and set it up, and Harold went to see him down in Oklahoma and offered him a record deal the next day at breakfast.
Isn't that amazing? He was kind of an outlaw. I loved his music. I think the one I liked the most was "How Do You Like Me Now?"
Yeah.
Now that I'm on my way.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah,
for sure.
But Lori, you've got an amazing, amazing story, because you would never know it looking at you, because you're the girl that would be in the yearbook as most innocent looking. Anyway,
Oh, goodness.
Right? But
I don't
you got
know about that.
sideways in your life, and and went down a deep, dark
More than
path.
sideways.
Tell
I
us
did.
a little bit about that.
Oh, goodness. Well, gosh, in high school, I had my first drink in high school, but really nothing too terrible happened. I enjoyed it. That was probably the worst thing that happened to me was I finally felt something that, oh, I can fit in. I fit in now. I feel good about myself. I'm not nervous all the time. I just can have a drink and things will be fine. And that was the first lie that it would tell me. But it wasn't until later life and after my son was born that there was a problem.
Yeah, because you went into postpartum depression, didn't you? I think I remember that now.
I did. And, at the time, I just didn't have enough confidence in myself, I guess might be the word, or just I had this idea that as a mom, I just had to suck it up and do the things and make everything happen. And I didn't reach out to other people. I should have. I found out later that, I could have reached out to other women, and but to me, I married into a family that, oh my goodness, my mother-in-law, she was just a beautiful lady, and home was spotless, and she cooked so well and all those things. And I wanted to be a lot like that. But I thought, you do those things by yourself and you just make it work and you push it and it happens. And so I didn't reach out for help. And what I did was I started cooking dinner early in the day and pouring a little wine, and that kind of thing. And before I knew it, I was drinking and I couldn't stop.
Mm. Yeah, I think Merle Haggard sang a song about, when you start out, you don't realize that you don't start out thinking the bottle's going to control you, but it absolutely takes control of your life, doesn't it?
It did. And it took me, I hate to say it, but it took me a while to realize that I could not control it. I went through treatment centers and into AA and different recovery things, still believing, well, I can still stop when I want. And it's a big lie. Big lie.
So it got so bad, and you have a wonderful husband, had an incredible mother-in-law that would have gladly helped you.
She did.
And she did, but it got to the point where you actually ended up leaving the home, right? We're asked to leave the home.
Yeah, it got really bad. By the time I was 35, so our son was 5 years old. And I had been to 4 treatment centers. I got a DUI in a church parking lot. it had gotten bad. It was very bad at that time, and my I mean, this was after some people had even offered me to stay in their homes for a while. I went through sponsors like they were nothing, and my last sponsor that I had at that time, she promptly took me to a homeless shelter, and I stayed at the downtown. It was the Downtown Rescue Mission. It was the Hope Center.
Wow.
They had a Hope Center down there.
What city? Here in Nashville?
And in Nashville, I was in the one downtown, and this would be 20 years ago. It was 24 years ago. So it's been a while. And stayed there. They had a program where you could stay there for a month. And I didn't make it the whole month. I decided one day it was beautiful outside and that I needed to walk out, and I did. I walked to find a drink, and I was picked up by a UPS man on the side of the road.
A UPS man?
Mm-hmm.
Was he delivering something to you, or he just...
No, I was passed out on the side of the road.
He tossed you out on the side of the road?
No, he didn't toss me out. I passed out.
Oh, you passed out on the side of the road?
Yeah.
Thank the Lord, he didn't toss you out.
No, I didn't have to have anybody toss. I was pretty bad around that time.
You know, it's amazing, isn't it, when you start out doing this. I mean, you're very, very attractive, you're very clean, but when you get into that lifestyle, you end up living in filth, don't you?
You do, and that's what's so deceiving. I could clean up easily. I really could for a while, and then I couldn't. And then I started, I meant to bring my passport picture from around that time because, oh my gosh, it shows the difference. I look better now than I did then, and that was 20 years ago. So my hair was falling out. I was hearing voices. It had gotten that bad. I couldn't go to the hairdresser. I got arrested at the hairdresser because they offered me alcohol, and I decided it was a good time to drink. And I walked out without paying my check. I had money for my check, but I walked out because I didn't realize what I was doing. And passed out in the bathroom at the that was at the Franklin, not farmers market, but the Franklin
Is it over there at the factory?
factory. Thank you. I couldn't come up with the name, but it's the factory in Franklin that I passed out there.
Wow. Now, it got so bad that, if I remember correctly, you actually ended up in jail.
I did. I ended up in jail with the second DUI, and I was in, Maury County Jail, and at that time, my husband, he had enough. He had to protect our son.
How old was your son? Was your son about 10 at that time?
No, he was just, he was about 6 then, six and a half. And, he had to protect our family. So he filed for divorce. And I honestly think that that's what hit me so hard is I realized you're going to lose everything. I had been treated with kid gloves a little bit by a lot of people, meaning well, but they just wanted to help me get sober. And so what happened to me in the jail was I started thinking about things that were going on, and my roommate or jailmate or whatever. Oh my gosh. The first day when I walked in and I flushed the toilet because the toilet's like in there with you. And I flushed the toilet and she said, "Don't ever do that again." And I was scared to death in the jail. And I'd even thought about sheets to hang myself, but I couldn't do it because I was scared it would hurt. I know, right? I mean, it's crazy. Here I was hurting myself more and everybody around me, but that would have hurt. So I'll never forget, I fell on my face on the concrete floor in the middle of this place. And I just begged God to please just help me, and just help me one more time. And but I don't know what it was. I just started I just started confessing. I did this, Lord. I did this, and I know I did this, and I shouldn't have done that. And I know this happened, and Lord, and I just kept going and kept going and kept going. And then at the end of it, I felt a little bit better, and I felt like I was, on the right track, and that maybe I could not drink this time. And a jail liaison came, tapped me on the shoulder. I didn't know who he was. And he said, would you like to go to a halfway house? And so I ended up at You Are Never Alone was the name of that house, because I'd been kicked out of a couple by that time.
Now, I'm going back 13 or 14 years since our first interview, so I got a great memory, but it's just real short. So,
I told you my story was long.
But, I'm told that my microphone is not close enough to me. So I remember that your husband, Todd, was going to divorce you, and he was through. And your 6-year-old son said, Dad, give her one more chance.
That was it. That was exactly it. I left the halfway house. I was kicked out of that one, the last one. But things have changed, and I really was trying not to drink. And I hadn't drank. I didn't drink in the halfway house. I was kicked out for some other reasons, and didn't understand the whole thing completely, but that's okay. Anyway, I didn't have a place to go. And so I went home. I had a cab take me home. The family got home, and Cole took my picture.
Did he change the locks?
To Todd. No, he didn't change the locks. And Todd fought for me. He really did. He fought for me for a long time. And Cole held up my picture to Todd, and he said, Dad, can we just give her one more chance? I think she's ready.
Amen.
And so that was like a month before, and it was in 2006, and I had my last drink June 13th, 2006.
Had your last
Amen.
drink?
Yes.
Praise the Lord.
Amen.
I want to pass the microphone over to Kim. And Kim, I want you to specifically, Robin, if you can move the camera over to Kim. I want you to specifically talk about how you were dating your husband, and you were still an alcoholic.
Right.
And he thought if he could get you clean. Tell your story.
Okay, so I had been sober for 12 years and I relapsed for a long, hard 5 years. And I met my husband during this time. And the first time I ever met him, we were actually on dates with other people. And he knew my date anyway. So a couple years later, we ran into each other, or we reconnected. And, when we first met, it was the party lifestyle. And my husband is not an alcoholic, but he was okay going out and having a few drinks with the girl he had just met. But I think he recognized pretty quickly that I didn't drink normally, and that normal people didn't drink.
You drank constantly, right?
That much. I would tell him to meet me in the Gulch after work, and I would be doing tequila shots when he got there. I mean, it was that. And, we've been married. In October, it'll be 5 years, but we've been together for 13 because it took a long time, first of all, for me to get sober, and then for him to believe that it was going to stick. And of all people, his ex-wife is the one who convinced him that if he stuck with me, that I would be a good partner for him, and that if he could help me get sober. So we were actually broken up, because we did that a lot. It was back and forth, because who can really be in a relationship with an alcoholic? And it was his birthday, so I called him and I said, well, let me just take you out for your birthday. And the next day, I got a DUI on my lunch break at work, and I was too drunk to even get arrested. So they took me to a hospital, and I texted him, and he came and got me. And then what did he do? He took me to my mother who was not happy at all. And anyway, it took him a little while to believe that it was real. There were, and I realized that it was going to take some time to build trust that we never really had.
Yeah.
And it caused us to have to be very open with each other. And it just laid the foundation for a beautiful relationship. And now he's my biggest supporter. He's my best friend. I just can't believe that God put me with the perfect partner for
Isn't that
me.
wonderful? Yeah, and I wanted you to share that because I wanted Lori to come back and talk. Pass the mic back to Lori and how Todd, fought for you even though you'd been in the gutter for a long time.
Well, he just wouldn't give up on me. He wouldn't give up, and he, he's a believer, and we would pray together, and he would, I remember in the beginning he said, "Honey, people have problems like this, but you can fight this, and we can fight this together." And that's the attitude he took, and he really tried so hard. And he almost tried too hard because he enabled me without realizing it, of course. He was trying to protect our family, and taking care of the attorneys and the DUI and those kind of things. And I just wasn't having enough consequences. Apparently, that was part of it. And yeah, but he did. He fought for me. He fought for me on his knees. He fought for me with our son, and just, taking care of our son when I wasn't there. I wasn't there a lot of those years, and it was terrible. His family, Todd's family, stepped in, and they were beautiful people. His sisters just took over and helped, and his mom, and I couldn't thank them enough for being there for him. He loves them all so dearly, and his mom has passed, and his sister Carla passed recently from cancer. And Darla is living, and just a beautiful, beautiful lady. And they all just supported him, and they all support him now.
We're talking about consequences. Kim said she was so drunk she couldn't even get a DUI. They took her to the hospital. That's pretty bad. But the woman that I took to, and my stepdaughter that I took to, drove 4 hours this morning to take to a treatment center in Anniston, Alabama, because I wanted her away from the drug dealers that she knows all these drug dealers, been in cahoots with them for a number of years, wanted her where she couldn't call somebody and come pick her up. But in her life, she got addicted, and she spent 4 years in prison, never knocked anybody over the head, never robbed a store, but she would get a DUI and not go to court, get another DUI and not go to court, and spent 4 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Heather, have you got anything to say about this?
Sure. What would you like me about what? Which part? I've got lots to say, so we got to narrow it down. But the consequences thing, I'll tell you, that's so true. I know in my own life, my recovery story is a little bit different, but my parents did an intervention on me, and I said no. Because I thought I could get sober on my own, and I still had so much shame, and realized that I couldn't physically get better on my own. And so I ended up saying yes and going, but the consequences of it were I lost everything when I said yes. And sometimes our yes, even though it's for the long-term benefits are good, we lose a lot in the process. And people, it's great. You get better, you get sober, and all those things. But people don't talk about what you leave behind. And it's a big thing. It's a big deal when someone says yes to getting sober, and yes to a new life. I have not had a DUI. I probably should have, but I hadn't, or been to jail. I was pulled over the night before I said yes, when I was trying to run from the intervention and not going. And I was driving on an expired license, an expired tag, because I just was so out of it to even know that I needed to have anything, have anything renewed. I just wasn't in a place to have anything renewed, you know? And thankfully I was let go. I don't know how, by the grace of God, I was let go. And I got on an airplane the next day with no ID. And this was after 9/11. And it was just, you know, it was just God doing his thing to get me where I needed to be. And I always joke around. I say, well, the people at the airport saw what condition I was in. And they were like, whatever we need to do to get this girl some help. Because it had gotten pretty bad. But in that, you know, when I was 25, I'd bought my own house. I had a car, I had all these things. And I lost everything to say yes to a new life and just started over from scratch, just rebuilding. And it was a process and it took a lot of time. But the consequences of that were that I had to rebuild and relationships, finances, and my spirit, my own spirit. I remember being in a recovery meeting and just my relationship with the Lord. And I remember the guy, it was a big book study out in California. And I remember the guy said, he said, whatever God you had when you came in here clearly wasn't working for you. So you need to find something else. And of course, here I am, you know, in recovery, getting offended. and I'm thinking to myself, well, actually, my God was working for me. That's why I'm still alive and here to even have this second chance. And I questioned him afterwards, because that's what alcoholics and addicts do, because we're right about everything, right? I questioned him afterwards, and I'll never forget. He looked me dead in the eye, and he said, Heather, maybe you need to learn to know him different. And I was like, man, that changed everything for me. And it changed everything about my relationship with the Lord. And so it was a rebuilding process. And I'm thankful for family. You know, Lori's talked about her family, her husband, her kid, her in-laws, and her sister-in-laws. Family is so important for someone in recovery to have that background. And, you know, you mentioned your husband, didn't really understand or think that it was that bad. And family, my husband's an interventionist. So family can be the worst because if they're not an alcoholic, they don't understand it. And they don't understand the depth of it and where it can take you. And they think, oh, well, as long as they can drink normal, you know, maybe they get a little bit better and then they can drink a little bit, or they can have this. And there's a lack of understanding of how bad this disease is and where it can take us.
And it really is. Let me ask Lori something else. But, you know, the woman that I took to the treatment facility today, she missed raising her first daughter, who's now 26 years of age. She was absent from her life, and that daughter won't have anything to do with her. Her second daughter is now 7, and somebody else is raising her daughter. So there are severe consequences to these things. And so, Lori, I wanted to ask you, what was the catalyst that set you free that last time in 2006 when you decided, you know, Larry decided 52 years ago he wasn't going to do it again? What was it that allowed you to escape, you know, to escape Satan's, you know, bondage?
Well, I think for me that certainly that day in the jail and then coming to realization that I was about to lose everything. But what had happened before I had kept relapsing was I had made such a mess of my life. And so every time that I would get a little bit of sobriety, I would start seeing things as they truly were and finally seeing the truth. And I couldn't handle it. I could not handle it, or thought I couldn't. And I would go back to drinking every time. And I think this time I wanted my family, and I was willing to do anything.
Yeah.
I was willing to do anything, and I was desperate for God.
Amen.
I was desperate for Him.
Amen.
And I don't know, but for other people, but for me, that meant, you know, I got up in the morning and it was just like the knowledge of your will for me today and the power to carry it out, Lord, please, you know, and I did whatever I had to. And I walked to work. I would call my sponsor, you know, and if I was feeling, you know, on edge and ask her if I could come hang out with her, you know, and she would say, well, ride your bike, come on over.
Wow.
And But also, one of the biggest things I had to learn about was obsession of the mind. And for me, if I got the thought of drinking, I couldn't entertain it a second. I had to immediately ask for help. If I entertained it,
You had to cast it out.
yeah. If I entertained it, I was headed towards something. And I never realized how strong that obsession of the mind was.
The battle of the mind is the...
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. It's the hopelessness of the mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah, and, you know, when I was involved in all this stuff, I got hung up on speed in the 60s and 70s. And what allowed me, I'd never liked the taste of alcohol, so I would drink mixed drinks. So that wasn't really something that I cared. But the speed, we'd stay up 4 or 5 days on this stuff, and when I would come off of it, I would be so sick, my bones would just ache. And then I did acid, and you know, I had a horrible trip on that. So when I walked away from that stuff, it's been many years now. I have no desire for the world anymore. I don't want to be in a honky tonk.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to go running in bars. And I mean, when I was young, you know, that's where we always went. You know, try and meet people of the opposite sex, and so young guys, that's where we'd hang out. But you know, thankfully, I don't want that anymore. I want to be with God's people. Yeah. And Lorraine's never really been addicted, but Lorraine, you went through a lot of pain growing up. Would you just speak to that and how you overcame not getting addicted like so many others?
Well, I lived in bars because my dad was an alcoholic, and I was his taste tester. And, you know, I was cute and I could do Elvis, and so he'd put me on the bar and have me dance for tips, and he bought rounds. And so I was exposed to that and all of his drinking buddies and stuff. And some of your innocence is lost because some of the men don't care what they do or say around a little child.
When you were a little child, and I've shared this publicly, so I might as well get over it. It still embarrasses. Oh, you know, you were a young child, and you know, and I've shared this publicly before, so I still hate to share it. But when I was like 6 years of age, a man got me along in a bathroom stall in Detroit, Michigan, and sexually assaulted me. And so that really messed with my mind for years. You know, and that's probably why I ended up in fights all the time, kicked out of school, in jail as a teenager, because I was just a wild and crazy guy because of the pain. But once I forgave, you know, and then gave my life to Christ to change it. But did you experience, I mean, you know, you don't have to share anything, details, but men were crude with just a little girl, weren't they?
They were, and I thought they had monsters in their pants. That's what I thought. Yeah. And they were always trying to separate me away from people.
Oh, they tried to get
me
you
alone.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't get alone, you know, because I felt like there's a monster. Something inside of me just told me there was bad. Monster, you know. And so it was fight, but I was a good runner. And I could run, and I could yell, and but my sister was done the same way, and trust issues, insecurities, never knowing where I was with because I had babysitters. When my parents split up, I had babysitters, and so they would go out and do their drinking bit and leave me with whoever, and so I had to go through sexual things with that. And never knowing where I was. If I wanted to call for help, I didn't know who I was with or where I was. So I grew up very insecure, trying to please everybody because I was told that if you're good, you get to do things, and if you're bad, you can't do anything. So I always tried to be really good and always pleasing, trying to love everybody. But inside, I was just really...
You know, I spoke in Chicago 15 years ago at a church, and the pastor asked me to go out in the foyer, and I remember a man that was probably in his 50s that had been sexually abused as a child. He was standing probably as far as our cameraman Rob was away. He started walking up to me, and he was crying. I haven't gotten over it. I haven't gotten over it. You know, and I found that if we don't forgive, those that have hurt us, you can't get over it. It torments you the rest of your life. Now, so that man that did that to me when I was a child has been dead. I'm sure I wouldn't know him if I saw him, but you forgive, but it doesn't exonerate them for what they did. God's still going to deal with them, but we have to forgive the person so that sets us free. So have you been set free from all of that pain of those years?
I have. I don't really think about it. The thing that haunts me the most is knowing that I probably am a love child, and that came at a time to where, my mother and father were both drunk, and this man was a friend of the family and so that troubles me, thinking I was the cause of the divorce, And so a lot of guilt on that. And then growing up and visiting my dad and him crying, saying how much he loved my mother and me all the time, knowing I was probably the cause of it. Not only of that, but you said something a while ago about when you were sober, you had reflection. And it would be so bad you'd start drinking again. Well, that's probably what happened to my dad, but we didn't understand it. We thought he did it because he wanted to. We didn't know he couldn't help himself. But, I look back on it now and I see the pain in his life that he went through, having a wife that was unfaithful, having a little girl probably wasn't his, but not sure. And probably he couldn't stand to be sober, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I remember him crying all the time, and begging my mother not to go. But, she had someone else she wanted to go be with. And, I was just, I lived in the streets. I was a wild child at 8 years old. And when they found me and let my mother finally have custody, I was dirty. And I stunk, and I didn't know what baths were. I remember when I finally had some kind of normalcy and got to go to bed at 8:30 or have baths every night, I thought I was, wow.
Well, I'm so glad you're clean now. You smell real good, and the Lord's cleaned you up. Hand that microphone to Larry. I want to share something else. So, I thought I did. What were we talking about? I done forgot. Go ahead, Larry. Tell us. How. And of course, we know that, in your life, you were ready to commit suicide, and a knock came to the door, and your uncle led you to the Lord, and that's how you got away from drug addiction and alcoholism.
That's true. God sent my my dad and my uncle are the ones who, God used to take care of me. And I've told you the story before, but my uncle is the only one who ever told me that I needed to be saved. I had no idea why I went to him one day as I was withdrawing from drugs. I had no idea why I asked him, what's wrong with me? And of course, he told me, and we went through the Romans road, but I wasn't ready to change yet. And so it went in one ear and out the other, but God used it to bring me back to him when I wasn't. People didn't do things to me. I did things to other people, for the most part. I never wanted to quit. I never wanted to live a long time. I didn't think I would live probably until 30. So at age 26, I was taking my own life because everything was going downhill. And I was desperate. There was no way out. And so I think I had a fight with my dad that morning, and I decided, I was going to take my own life. So that's when I took the gun, and I was going to kill myself. But just before I did, my uncle, who told me how to be saved, knocked on the door. My dad had gone to him and got him to come and talk to me. So at the moment I was going to take my life, 2 minutes later I was saved. But God knew about that, a long time ago. Probably before time, he knew exactly what was going to happen, and the devil could not have me. The devil almost did, we think, but God knew, and he took care of me. And God is the one who did it. And after that, went to college, here I was a drug addict, and I went to college, a Christian college, with all these young people, pastors' daughters and Christian people's family. And here I was, a drug addict right in the middle of all of it. But I knew that God wanted me to do that. And so that was my goal. And I did it. And he blessed me. Before I was saved, he worked things so that I would be taken care of afterwards. And it's just like miracles of things that happened before
Isn't that
I was
amazing?
saved.
Isn't it? Yeah. You know, I remember that day, Larry. I was listening to Oliver B. Green on the radio. And he said, he was praying and he said, Lord, save the sinner nearest hell. And all of a sudden your uncle knocked on the door.
Yeah.
I'm joking, folks, but Oliver B. Green.
Oliver B. Green.
He would get on the radio and he'd pray and he'd say, Lord, save the sinner closest to hell. And boy, you were close to hell, Larry.
For sure, definitely. But
Had a pistol in your mouth, getting ready to pull the trigger, and Christ sent somebody and saved your soul.
exactly, yeah, it was great. And he's taken care of me ever since. I'm so blessed now. I can't believe it. I mean, prayers answered all the time. All the time.
And you're so loved.
What?
And you're so loved.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey,
Hand
yeah.
that microphone over to Lorraine. I want to do something here. So, Lorraine, keep it up close to you. Lorraine supports In Your Corner Ministries, and so we're gonna. She's one of our hope dealers. We're not dope dealers anymore. We're hope dealers. We're sharing hope. So, Lorraine, we'll get the sizes straightened out when we go back to the house afterwards. Lorraine's baked a pineapple upside down cake, but she didn't turn it upside down, so it's just going to be a regular cake.
Blind ladies don't turn cakes upside down.
But anyway, Lorraine, you're a hope dealer. There's your T-shirt. Let me hand this mic over to Lori. And Lori, we're going to make you a hope dealer. We're going to
right,
make
thank
Heather a
you.
hope dealer, and we're going to make Kim. Would somebody take their foot off this microphone, please? Do I have another one? Oh. We got one for Kim, and we get to. So anyway, folks, if you want to be a hope dealer, go to inyourcorner.tv, support the ministry for $10 a month, and we'll send you a hope dealer T-shirt. So Lori, it looks good on you. It looks good on all of you. Let's go back and is there anything that you want to share? By the way, we're on the Goodview TV network. This is being broadcast around the world tonight. Not only that, we're on about 10 or 12 different social media sites, and we will have this in the next day or two on our website at inyourcorner.tv. You'll be able to watch this meeting again. Is there anything that you haven't said that you think our audience needs to know about you?
Well, it didn't end for me the day that I accepted Christ and started following things. I still had to do the work. I had to do recovery and the 12 steps through CR, through Celebrate Recovery, and also secular recovery as well. And it's biblical, and you go through the steps, and you make friends, and you're able to work the things out in your life that caused all of the mess to start with.
Amen. Are you glad that God's a God of second chances?
Oh, yes. And third and fourth and 100.
Isn't it the truth? And I want to share something with you folks. I actually had a man, I don't have time to tell the whole story, but a man in our church who was so good to me when I was growing up, paid my way to go to a Christian camp just before I turned 16 years of age. And I gave my life to the Lord, and I lived just the most joyous life for the next 4 or 5 months. And then somebody enticed me to sin, and several months later, and I felt so guilty. I went back into the world for 8 years, and drinking, partying, anything that Satan had or the world had. I was going 90 miles an hour down a dead-end street. And what happened to me, I had a 2-year-old daughter that was sitting in her high chair, and I came home, and I looked at that little girl. And the Lord spoke to me and said, if you don't get your heart right, that little girl might not ever know me. And the love of that child touched me so deeply that I recommitted my life to the Lord. I was living just north of Bloomington, Illinois. I rededicated my life. That was in the spring. In the summer, I'll never forget this because it was the bicentennial year here in America. It was the summer of '76. We rented a U-Haul, and I moved our family to Tennessee, and I went to Bible University in Chattanooga that fall. And I was like Larry. I was in homiletics, and and I didn't have any Bible background, and all these preachers' kids could rightly divide the word, and I felt like an idiot, but I struggled, and so it was living righteously was a struggle for me, even up until my 30s. I struggled. Anybody else ever have struggles? Heather, how about you?
Yeah, I had a lot of struggles in my life. I would say I had a really great childhood, but my parents divorced. My dad was a pastor for a little while, and then my parents divorced when I was 12, and moved from Massachusetts to Florida give it like one last chance, a fresh start. But we know in recovery that location change alone doesn't change your situation. And it didn't work out. And my parents ended up getting divorced. And that was really hard. That took a toll on our whole family in different ways. And God has redeemed a lot of that now with, relationship and forgiveness, as you talked about with my parents. But it was a struggle. And I was a little bit later in life with my addiction. I was a competitive figure skater, and so I had an injury. And then I had another injury. I had a wooden shelf at work fall on my head. So I had a few little, bits of pain pills, what they could do for me. And then it was like when I was 25 really was the first time, and I spent 5 years, and it was a really fast downward spiral because I realized that I hadn't dealt with the pain of my past. I hadn't dealt with all that stuff with my parents. And I realized what the pain pills could do for me emotionally, and that was mask the pain of my reality. And it took me to dark places. And so, what was the question again? The pain. So, once I got into recovery and realized, and I grew up in church, and church was not the safe place for me. Like, there was so much shame, so much guilt, that I didn't feel like I had anyone to turn to for help. And that's why I'm so passionate as a pastor, providing that safe place in the church for all people, because we're all broken. We all have something. We just act out differently, whether it's food or, whatever it is. We have something. None of us are living a life that's like, perfect. But what I've learned was through the 12 steps that God gave us that come straight from the Bible, walking through those, I was able to find so much healing, because they say, you take away the drugs and alcohol, you find the real problem. And it usually comes from some kind of trauma or abandonment or whatever it is, of why we use and drink. And so I walked through those steps. I got sober through AA and NA. And then 3 years in, I did it through Celebrate Recovery. And it was just such a beautiful experience to do that biblically, when God was not just a God of my understanding, but it was Jesus Christ, my personal Savior.
And as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking, and oh boy, if you guys were here last week, Troll and Rob would tell you, we had women that had people, murdered in their lives, died in their life. But I'm thinking every single one of us sitting here tonight has been through deep pain in our lives. And seems like that's one of the things that sends us off the edge, right? I want to ask Kim. Kim, your mom, we knew your mom, and your mom was, if there was ever a saint, your mom, and she was such a Southern belle, so sophisticated and so well-spoken. And, so you came up in the church, as we would say, and as I said to Lori, you got sideways, and it took you a long time. I mean, it wasn't like, I remember somebody saying, when I would give a testimony, they would say, well, I'm so glad, and they kind of did it privately, that I can say I never had a problem. But, tell us, what was it that, because you were faithful, and then you were away from the Lord, and then you came back, and I'm so thankful that the Lord still forgives. But kind of give us a little insight into that.
Well, when you say about being faithful to the Lord, and I've said this before, when I grew up in a household where Jesus was just a fact of life. It was you're learning things. It was paper, table, Jesus, apple. I never knew, there was never a moment when I did not know that Jesus was Lord. I didn't know that. I knew that as a child, but I didn't know it in my heart, in my soul. I baptized and saved at church camp when I was 15, And I always had a relationship with God. I always cried out to God. And I want to go back to something Lori said. And I think we all, as alcoholic and addicts, can relate to this. The feeling of belonging. You know, that's what alcohol did for me as a teenager. I was a teenager who never felt like I fit in. I was a child who never felt like I fit in. I just always felt like I was different. And when I drank, I wasn't different. I was fun. Now, you may find this hard to believe, but by nature, I'm pretty quiet and reserved. But I decided I didn't want to be that way. And so I forced myself to become more outgoing and more engaging with other people. And alcohol let me do that in ways I never would have dreamed of. And all of a sudden, I was the life of the party. So who wouldn't want to be? You go from being
You had an alter ego.
I did. Yes, I had different personalities. And they weren't all pleasant at all. So growing up in that household, my parents really didn't know what to do with me. I started drinking as a teenager, and I would come home, and they knew I would be drinking, and they didn't know how to handle it. They did the best they could. And my mother never stopped praying for me. She never gave up on me. Again, she was my biggest enabler, my biggest cheerleader, and she she never gave up on me. Prayers, for anyone out there struggling, if someone you love is struggling, don't ever stop praying, because don't ever discount what Jesus can do in someone's life.
Amen. Thank you for sharing that. Let's go back to Laura. I'm going to give her the last word, but I do want to say there's a lady that was involved in treatment and ran treatment facilities for years, and I interviewed her on the show 10 or 12 years ago. And she said, and somebody helped all of us. She said, a lot of people say you got to let them hit rock bottom. And she said, but I want to tell you this, rock bottom is dead. She said, so here's what I tell parents. Get a bag ready and have it ready. And when your child is ready to go, you be ready to go and do whatever it takes to take them someplace to get help. And I've been working for several years trying to get my stepdaughter into a place where she could get rid of this demon. And I received a call at 4:30 this morning. I was mad, but I answered the phone. Latrell said, well, she might be in trouble. I answered the phone, and she was ready to go. I got up and left the house and took them then. Lori Payne, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tell us something that people need to hear that you haven't shared tonight, because I know that you are involved. Has it helped you to go and minister to others now that does it help you to go and minister to others now?
It's necessary for me. It really is. It helps me. Yes, it helps me in so many ways, but it also, God has put it on my heart. He didn't even have to really ask me to do it, because I wanted to do it. And I would have never said that before when I was in recovery. I thought, oh, no, I'm not going to. But when you find a way out and it's Jesus, you want to tell everybody.
And it's selfish if you don't, isn't it?
And you want to share the things that tripped you up, and the things that caused you to relapse and different things like that. And just because if it spares one person from going through just the misery of it, it's worth it.
Lori, how would and I don't want you to give your phone number or anything like that, but you did have a blog, Flying Sober. Is that still active?
It is. I don't really get on it much anymore. I'm Lori Payne. I'm Lori Harden Payne on Facebook, and people can reach out to me that way if they want.
But you teach a recovery meeting where?
Well, I'm one of the team leaders at Celebrate Recovery at Graceland Church, Lewisburg Pike in Franklin.
Well, let's let Heather give a word for her ministry, her and her husband's ministry there, in case somebody wants. Because a lot of people don't know where to go, and if somebody lives in the Franklin, Tennessee area, which I think is the coolest town in America, they can come connect with you. It is. My daughter and family live there.
Yeah, so we meet every Wednesday night from 6:30 to 8:30. The first hour is either a testimony, which tomorrow night we have a fantastic testimony, and then the opposite weeks are teaching lesson on the 12 steps and 8 principles. And one thing that we really drive home to people to understand is that God made a blueprint in His holy word for us to live, for all of us to live, not just addicts and alcoholics. There's a blueprint. And it's the 12 steps that come. A lot of people don't realize the 12 steps come straight from the Word. Bill and Bob, who founded AA, took that out to make it more attractive to people. And Celebrate Recovery goes back and shows you where every step comes from. Amen. And so it's discipleship. And, it's a soft place to fall. Everything that we do is to help somebody to get to the next spot. And we live out the 12 steps. We live out the 12th step, which is helping another and giving back. And we practice the principles in all of our affairs and disciple others. And so we have free childcare. If you have children, it's a great place for husband and wife to come together. Even if it's one spouse that's using or drinking or has the issue, there's a place for the other spouse to recover with them because they've been affected by it. So they also need to recover with them as well. So we'd love to have you come, men and women 18 and up.
Well, thank you, ladies, for joining us tonight. And want to, people need to know where to go.
Yeah. What she said.
Oh. Okay. So.
Addiction knockout.
My wife's always telling me stuff to do, and I don't know what. So I'm sorry, folks, for my wife interrupting, but it's a good interruption. We developed this program. Thank you, Lori. We developed this program. Actually, I paid curriculum writers and spent $10,000 developing this program about 9 years ago. It's called Addiction Knockout. And if we're 100% in favor of Celebrate Recovery, we're 100% in favor of anything you can do to, as long as you're pointing, give your life to Jesus Christ, He'll set you free. But Addiction Knockout, if you want the book, it's absolutely free. There's a free PDF on our website at inyourcorner.tv, and you can download that. If you want to buy one, just go to Amazon.com. I think they're $10 if you want the physical book. But we're having those resources there. And if you want to go, we would encourage you to go to a Celebrate Recovery meeting. But I wanted to tell you that, Bobby Hayden is one of our dear friends and he likes to think he was the one that got us into the recovery ministry. But I interviewed Lori 2 or 3 years before I did Bobby Hayden. Bobby Hayden, I've interviewed 20 times probably. So, and he's sent so many people our way and brought so many people to our program. And we probably have more content on people that have been set free by the power of Jesus Christ because we're on television for 12 years filming people in recovery. So we have all those resources at inyourcorner.tv. And so Bobby often says I had a one-step recovery program and his name was Jesus Christ. And I want to tell you, that is not true. I mean, it's always Jesus, but not everybody is instantly changed. I wasn't instantly changed. It took me years. I remember my mother talked about when she got saved. She said she had this incredible experience, that came over her, this peace, and she saw a river flowing and stuff. And I felt nothing when I gave my life to Christ. Everybody is different. So, the main thing is to, Nicodemus came to Jesus. He was a ruler of the Jews by night, and he said, "Rabbi, what must I do to be saved?" And Jesus said, "You must be born again." There's a physical birth when you're born of your mother. There's also a spiritual birth, and that happens when you recognize that you are a sinner and you go to the Lord and say, "Lord, I'm a sinner. I ask you to forgive me my sins, and I want you to save me." Now, in my life, I often tell I was wild and crazy, running in the wrong direction, but when I gave my life to Christ, you see, I was chasing things of the world, drugs, alcohol, all that stuff that goes with it. I was chasing after that stuff. But when I gave my life to Jesus Christ, I turned, and I still had a lot of those desires, but I started running from them. So I repented, and that's all repent means, is to turn around. So you quit following the world and you start following Jesus. So if you haven't asked him to come into your heart and save you. Ladies and gentlemen, It's been a pleasure, Lorraine. So good to see you. Thank you, folks, for joining us. We'll be back on Thursday night, but we sincerely appreciate it. Lord bless you. Good